Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth.
Oh, what the They killed my... Did they kill that guy? Are you kidding me, dude? Not again! Are you kidding me?
Yes, it has happened again.
Our message is really clear and straightforward. We need ICE out of Minnesota.
Flashback.
That phrase, defund the police, cost Jamie Harrison tremendously. Stop sloganeering. Sloganeering kills people. Sloganeering destroys movements.
We are still carrying the weight of defund the police around.
Come on.
Now, by the way, almost no member of Congress said that.
It was a Republican talking point that you guys let them run with at you. But my point being is, I do think that people on your wing of the party have hidden behind that rather than look at other issues that cost you seats, cost you votes. Like defund the police was not the reason you lost the election last year. No one was even running on it. Joe Biden increased funding to the police.
I was giving you an example.
End of flashback.
They are not making us more safe. As the tragic killing this morning, as people saw it viscerally on that video, shows us they are making us less safe. With 3,000 agents, which of course includes border control, outnumbering the sworn police officers in Minneapolis and St. Paul by 3-1, and even larger than the 10 metropolitan police departments, this is completely out of whack, completely out of balance, and now 3 people have been shot, 2 resulting in death.
A lot of black people, especially the dumb ones who think that we're all in this together, they're with the white liberals and they try to con themselves into trying to think they have a stake in fights where black folks have no stake at all. They live in their own imaginations and they furnish these delusions with all kinds of pathetic, racially neutral fantasies, and their ideas about politics are deranged as a result. And they'll pull you into their asinine daydreams too if you let them. Of course, there's been more killings by ICE in Minneapolis, but the only ones that matter are the white people. Those are the ones that make headlines. And when you got the white media giving attention to a subject, of course you're going to have some Negroes who feel like they got to show how much they care because they know that's what the white media wants to see. But this practice of established white power killing certain white people in order to make a point, there's nothing new about it. We saw this with both world wars. Dr. John Henrik Clarke taught us that all of these European wars were nothing more than a series of arguments between a gang of thugs about which one of them was going to rule over us. I don't fault our ancestors for having taken part in the American Revolution, but that's a perfect example of black people misunderstanding the enemy's intentions. During the Revolution, both the British and American rebels promised black people, especially black slaves, that they would free them all if they won the war. And that's how they tried to recruit black folks to be on their side. General Washington initially was opposed to the idea, but as the war dragged on and it was obvious the white soldiers couldn't cut it on their own, he had to accept the reality, and the rebels made that promise just like the Brits did. Many of the slaves joined the Continental Army, while others joined the British Army. Well, what happened when the American rebels won that war? They immediately declared that their promises were null and void, and the same people who said that they would end slavery instead wrote a constitution that enshrined slavery into law. They only reinforced slavery. They didn't give it up. And as for the blacks who weren't slaves, did the end of British rule improve their situations? Not one bit. So when you look at what's happening with immigration, this is political theater. It's an argument between 2 packs of pathological liars. Black folks don't have a dog in this fight. This is all about trying to see if they can recreate 2020. That real, genuine energy that was in the streets then. They're trying to see if they can manufacture it. And that's the reason why, for this political theater, I'm giving thumbs down to Jacob Fry, the duplicitous, fork-tongued mayor of Minneapolis. He's been the biggest friend that the thugs in the Minneapolis police ever had. He stood by the likes of Derek Chauvin 6 years ago when he murdered George Floyd. Jacob Fry defied the entire city of Minneapolis to the point that they literally had to shame him out of the town square. They ran him out of downtown, literally. That's how determined he was to stand beside the police after they were murdering unarmed citizens. So all of this kvetching and whining that he's doing about Trump, his objection isn't to people being killed. It's to who has the power to do so. It's a monopoly on violence that he's concerned about. Because you can't maintain a system of injustice without using violence. There's no other way. Nobody will actually choose to live under injustice. You have to make them live under it. And that of a necessity requires violence, which is why the U.S. government demands a monopoly on the use of organized violence. That's how it compels obedience. Why do you have so much economic inequality? Because the government hands the rich everything, and just to make sure you don't get any ideas that you're going to change this, they got goons with guns who will arrest or even kill you in order to enforce the unjust and immoral rules that they call laws. The laws weren't written for them. They were written to control you. So now that you have a white man, Alex Peretti, who's been killed by ICE, nobody's pointing out that the entire reason for this is that nothing substantive was done by lawmakers after the 2020 uprisings. In order for people to be sitting here going, where are all of the prosecutions at? Good question. Black people are asking the same question too. The changes that occurred after 2020 only came about at the social level, which is why you got cops who are being routinely indicted because the old grand jury dodge isn't going to work anymore. That's what happens when you make fundamental changes at the social level. And they're getting regularly convicted, which means all of that crap about, oh, the jury just doesn't understand. Oh, they understand now. That's what all of those protests leading up to the uprisings of 2020 were about. It was a massive public education program, and it's one that actually had an impact. Not enough of an impact, there's still plenty more to do, but it definitely moved the needle. Biden didn't crack down on the police during his administration. Instead, he illegally diverted COVID money to the police, which was blatantly malfeasance. But both political parties understand that their own position depends on nobody being able to challenge them for political office or for the resources necessary to mount a successful campaign. So they also depend on the thugs in blue to ensure that their own position never changes. It's a mutual protection racket. Crooked cops protect crooked politicians. When the Democrats came out and started lying and saying, defund the police is a bad thing, don't say that, we're not with that at all. When the police saw that, they were like, okay, good. We know that no matter what rhetoric they may claim, they're not going to actually do anything to punish us. And this is the result. And by the way, with the case of Alex Peretti, you'll notice that I really haven't said anything about what a lot of people are trying to make into the real bone of contention. Did he have the gun out and shooting at people or not? So, well, he did have a gun on him, but that doesn't matter. He wasn't shooting at anyone. Well, neither was Philando Castile. And George Floyd didn't have a weapon on his person, in his vehicle, or anywhere around him. But that didn't stop the white media from deciding, well, we're not going to challenge the narrative. In fact, we're going to reinforce the police's narrative. Well, he must have done something, right? Wink and a nod. Oh, yeah, you got all of these guys who've been recruited into ICE by Stephen Miller. And these guys, in many cases, they have no law enforcement background, so what? Neither did any of the white people who participated in the slave patrols. And white society didn't have a problem with that either. Oh, these guys, they don't have any sort of law enforcement training. Yeah, neither did Kyle Rittenhouse. And yet they circled the wagons for him. That's the reason why I came up with that phrase, the irregular forces of white supremacy. These are the individuals who are the non-uniformed race soldiers who are running around committing ambushes. And white society has given them a pass as well. And they've noticed that. You didn't have to have a badge to realize that if you were white, you could kill a black person as long as you said certain things. You understood exactly what happened because of pattern recognition. Hey, if I just say, I was afraid, or if I just say, well, he made a furtive move, I couldn't be sure what he was trying to do, and that's my get out of jail free card. They know that because the society has conditioned them to see that over and over and over again. You don't have to have somebody say, go ahead and say this. Instead, they give big publicity to everybody who does that. And as a result, all of these anti-black racists see how they can literally get away with murder. And then what they saw was, well, hell, you can extend that even to white people if they're standing too close to black folks. You can go ahead and do this in Charlottesville. Daniel Perry killed a white man in Texas. That's okay. Kyle Rittenhouse killed some BLM protesters. See, we're making the point that you can kill black people or kill white people who seem to be aligned with them, or at least those who are just not towing the line. We're giving you a pass on that too. They recognize that. They know it. You don't have to actually come out and say it, although there have been a number of them who have. So for the people who want to make a big deal out of, but he didn't have a gun out shooting at anyone, please, we passed that Rubicon a long time ago with black people. We passed that over 140 years ago. It's not about whether or not this man was armed. It's not about whether or not he's shooting at people. Police take white suspects into custody all the time, even after they get fired on. They know exactly what they're doing. What this comes down to is, as far as they're concerned, the greatest power of all is the power to kill people. That's what white supremacy puts at the top of its hierarchy of power. The power of life and death. And it's to kill with impunity. It's not enough to just kill. You got to be able to kill and then you walk away as if you did nothing, like Daniel Penny did when he strangled Jordan Neely to death. The police didn't say anything, let him just go on home as if nothing had happened. And the white media, they had this blanket policy, we're going to protect this guy. We're not going to let anybody know who he is. So yeah, this is a position the white society put itself into. They allowed these race killers to get away with this behavior for so long. They allowed it to become ingrained into society. They allowed for it to become nothing more than background noise. And now that background noise has become deafening for them. Now you had Senator Amy Klobuchar who said that there's more ICE in Minneapolis than there are police. She said that as if the Minneapolis PD has a problem with the citizens being killed, as if they don't like it, as if the Minneapolis police are just this group of humble, honest folks who are so kind-hearted and their hearts break to see citizens being killed by law enforcement. What a crock. We all know that the racists in the Minneapolis police, they're watching ICE killing people and they're green with envy. They wish that was them. They don't feel like ICE is infringing on their turf. That's not what they think. The Minneapolis police see what's happening to these protesters and they feel like, man, wish we'd been gunning them people down during the protests and the uprisings. Wish we'd been gunning them down. Wish that could have been us. The Minneapolis police union's cheering for ICE. They're not bothered by this at all. So Amy Klobuchar can get the hell out of here trying to pretend there's more ICE in Minneapolis than police. Yeah, you got a lot of Minneapolis police out there who are with them. What these guys don't like is that being white isn't stopping them from getting killed. That's their problem. As white people, they're used to the thugs in blue, the racists with badges being on code no matter what. And what that means is white people don't use violence to stop other white people from exercising freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to protest. That's what they understand because it's always been that way. And this also damages what little stock or leverage that these white liberals thought that they had because it undermines their pathetic racial coalition talk. See, that whole racial coalition finesse is based on the idea that white liberals can come up to us and say, why, we're going to use our whiteness on your behalf. See, this is our value to the movement. We don't have to actually do anything other than just be white because they know that they got racial privilege. They know that the authorities are all white. White power controls things. So they're going to go ahead and tell us that they'll do things on our behalf, but nothing ever comes of it. They know that the police are not going to attack them with fire hoses, that the police are not going to sick attack dogs on them, and certainly aren't going to be gunning them down in cold blood because white supremacy means to be on code. So they're the perfect human shields, or so they say, because their whiteness makes it where they're not going to be touched. So you need to be in a coalition with them because whiteness, that's something that they can use to your advantage, right? That's why it's advantageous to have white allies with you, right? Except we recognize that the only ones who ever got anything out of these quote-unquote alliances was them. So we turned our backs on that whole con game, and now we see white skin isn't protecting them. It didn't protect the white men Kyle Rittenhouse killed. It didn't protect that white man who Daniel Perry killed in Texas. And having white skin didn't protect Renee Good or Alex Pretty either. When white society taught these violent racists that it would not punish them, that it wouldn't touch them, it also emboldened them to attack and kill white people who didn't immediately bow down. Now, for the timid and the gullible who told me 10 years ago that Trump becoming president would be the end of us, and that they had to vote for Biden because Trump getting reelected was too dangerous, tell me something. Have we been herded onto the cattle cars yet? Are they rounding up black Americans, or are they rounding up black immigrants? This is not to say that we have any friends here. We don't. That's the entire point. This is what I was trying to get across to people for several years, the ones who were too scared, too ignorant, too stupid to see the reality. We don't have anybody who's on our side. And whatever thing you're scared of, they've been doing it to us the whole time. It's amazing you got people who have become completely and thoroughly desensitized to the brutality that they've had inflicted on them. To the point now that they're sitting here telling themselves that their condition isn't brutality at all, that it's somehow normal. These are people whose minds and spirits have been broken. But for the rest of us who haven't lost our minds or our guts or our intelligence, we understand exactly what the score is. And now we got these white allies. They're the ones gnashing their teeth because they're being killed with impunity. And we're not hearing any lies being told about, don't say that ICE needs to leave. That's going to offend and alienate all of those middle American voters, white people in the suburbs. I mean, you got to understand, they just trust people with badges. You can't say ICE needs to get out. That's going to alienate them. Nobody's talking like that now. All the phony outrage and the lies from Jim Clyburn and Jim Himes and all the other Jims about defund the police cost us elections. Now we're seeing the same Democrats who said defund the police was political suicide screaming they want ICE not just defunded, but abolished. All because ICE agents killed 2 white people. And make no mistake, ICE's goons have killed other people, brown people too, and some black ones, by the way. But nobody cares about them. They're not important. None of these white Democrats is protesting those deaths. They don't care, and that's the entire point. This is about showing everybody that the whole world has to stop spinning on its axis if a white person is harmed. This is about upholding and reinforcing that white people are supposed to be untouchable. They're not supposed to be treated like this. And none of these immigrant groups even sees that because they all think that they're white adjacent, they've contributed to this. But all of these politicians are completely ignoring those dead bodies. And the immigrants don't see it because they don't want to. They're clinging to the delusion that they can get back to what they thought was the old normal, without realizing it was just an illusion. Neither Jacob Fry nor Amy Klobuchar nor any of these other hypocrites and bigots are bothered by ICE. They're not objecting to ICE. They're not even objecting to ICE killing people. They certainly didn't have a problem with ICE killing black people or these brown ones. They're objecting to ICE killing white people. Now, we have a lot of black people who are practicing some schadenfreude about now, but you wouldn't be able to see the white left stewing in their own juices if Kamala had gotten elected. Understand that, family. Black people have just been mindlessly going along with what all these other people tell us to do because we've been working to stabilize their position. They lie and say, this is going to help you out. No, it doesn't. It only helps to stabilize their position. And it's not until black people decide that we're going to act and think for ourselves that we start seeing different things happening. You need to understand something. Things have to come to a head in order for any sort of change to take place. There's no other way. For too long, we allowed everybody else to dictate to us how we should react, to tell us that we got to do this because that's the right way, and to tell us what's in our interest, when in reality, they were just duping us into doing what was in theirs. Now, of course, withdrawing from a political process that hasn't produced anything for you is not in and of itself the end game. And it's not the only thing we're doing either. But it is a crucial first step, and this shows why. They can hoop and holler all they want, but the reason the white right is trying to gerrymander voting maps is because they understand there's no blue wave on the horizon. I showed you that even the New York Times had to admit it. Democrats are ahead in the polls, but slightly. The reason 2020 was a wipeout for the Republicans was because the black vote was mobilized. I've said this to you for the better part of 10 years. If black voters wanted to get out to the polls, I mean for real, wanted to get to the polls, there's nothing the white right can do to stop us. And to be sure, they do want to stop us. But in reality, the only political party that stopped black people from going to the polls has been the Democrats, because they haven't done anything for our vote. We've gotten absolutely nothing for all of the blood, sweat, and years that we've put behind these people. Meanwhile, we just sit there watching while literally everybody else gets policies and tangibles exclusively for them. They make sure to produce for everybody else, but for black people, we don't even get an IOU. Instead, we get you people are just too unpopular. You gotta understand that. It's unfeasible. You're not a popular constituency for us to be doing anything for. You just need to wait and wait and wait. The late Bill Moyers once said that elections are about who gets what. He worked in the Johnson White House back in the 1960s, so he understood the game of politics from the inside. He understood that elections are transactional. They have to be. Rahm Emanuel, on the other hand, said that the Democrats cannot let elections be transactional. Now, he's a huge Zionist. He wants Israel to get as much of America's gross national product as possible. So when it comes to Israel, for Rahm Emanuel, elections better be transactional and nothing else. All he means is when he says elections can't be transactional, he's talking about for black people. He doesn't want elections to be transactional for us. In other words, we're not supposed to get anything out of it. Now that ICE is killing white people, you still don't see Democrats pushing legislation to punish them. Of course not. That would set a horrible precedent. They're doing what Biden did when he was in the White House and what Kamala Harris did when she was California Attorney General. They're backing the badge. Their pathetic public speeches means nothing. These are empty words, and they know it. Saying they want ICE out of Minneapolis is pointless. What they should be demanding is that these killers be in prison. put a legal framework in place that would make it possible for you to throw them in a cage, but they're not doing that, because that would be the start of a slippery slope. If you start publicly advocating for thugs with badges to be imprisoned for killing white people, well, then you can no longer BS your way around demanding that they be imprisoned for killing black people. See, that's the real thin line that they're trying to tiptoe their way around. When now Senator Amy Klobuchar was Hennepin County DA in Minneapolis, she had a chance for her office to go after Derek Chauvin back then. He had killed a man in 2006, the year that Klobuchar was running for the Senate. Now, this killing happened in October of 2006, and the citizens of Minneapolis were outraged. But then DA Amy Klobuchar was not. She had spent her entire career as a prosecutor protecting the police and making sure the citizens didn't get justice. She was one of the absolute worst prosecutors in America when it came to making sure she didn't prosecute cops. That was her entire MO. I don't prosecute police. Just like Kamala Harris did when she was a prosecutor in California. But hey, this was October 2006. On the political landscape, everybody was talking about the Iraq War. Nobody was talking about police brutality. Well, except for black people. And back then, Democrat shills and scum like Jim Clyburn and do-nothing political upstarts in Illinois like Barack Obama had the majority of black voters distracted and focused on the Democrats' pet issues. So Amy Klobuchar, the prosecutor, didn't care. She wasn't feeling any heat, so it didn't matter. And when Derek Chauvin's murder case came across her desk in October of 2026, just a month before her Senate election, she didn't even begin a prosecution. She didn't even touch it. Just like all those other police killings that she refused to prosecute. This was just another police murder that she would ignore, like all the others. So for 4 months, from October until she was sworn in January 2007, she just slow-walked that case until after she was out of office and safely ensconced in her Senate seat in D.C. And by then, it didn't matter. Or so she thought. Her successor didn't even bother to prosecute Chauvin. After all, it was 2006, and as the white media love to say, the public trusts the police and won't prosecute them. Police murdering people, particularly black people, was the perfect crime for both the cops and the prosecutors. That is, until the black grassroots made it a felony. Senator Klobuchar doesn't care about these ICE killings any more than she cared about the black Minneapolis citizens who the police routinely murder. And if these were illegals who had been killed, hell, if this was anything other than a white person who was getting killed, she would have limited her response to a statement posted online. That's what she did about the George Floyd murder case. When it blew up in her face, she decided, I better not say anything publicly. I'll just post some little know-nothing statement online and hope that gives me some cover. And of course, the white media tried to. At last report, Democrats are now threatening to pull their support for the government funding bill over the killing of these two white people. Now, that's just more of the same old political football. This is about them trying to do some last-minute maneuver to get Trump and the Republicans to make some economic concessions to them on the budget. That's what this is. They're using these two dead white people as political footballs in the game of power politics. And before any of these Democrat shills call themselves saying, well, you can't say anything like that. The Democrats are in the minority. They're not in control of the Congress. Keep in mind, when George Floyd was murdered in 2020, Democrats were also in the minority then. And did they take that as any opportunity to threaten any sort of funding bills? Or did they decide to go along with the get-along? When you had coast-to-coast riots, did the Democrats say all business in D.C. must stop because of this? Of course not. When have Democrats ever done any sort of political brinksmanship because a black person was harmed? Black people get killed, but Democrats support and pass anti-Asian hate crime laws instead. This is not a question of political popularity. It's a question of a deliberate racial attitude by both parties. Why do they lie so much? Because they need to. They don't fear lying to us because they began lying to themselves long, long ago. History is a record of the events, and it's also a chronicle of their crimes. And like any criminal, they want to silence the witness. Well, black people have been calling this mess out for hundreds of years. We've been sounding the alarms, telling everybody exactly what's been going on and how it needs to be stopped. But we've also been the main ones who they've ignored, or that they malign, that they demonize, that they defame. They justify the killings, and this is the result. White society, starting with its media and its government, made this mess. They could stop this anytime they want to, but that's the problem, isn't it? They're stuck on the horns of a dilemma. This entire system of injustice has been one that they have reaped real, tangible benefits from. And as far as they're concerned, now they're caught on the horns of a dilemma. How do they get themselves out of this mess, but still maintain the system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees that they are completely and utterly dependent on? Well, we know what the answer is, but the problem happens to be that after hundreds of years of being pampered and coddled, when it comes time for you to actually put out some real effort and actually have to make some sacrifice and actually have to endure some pain, well, black people have been getting scorched and having the skin ripped off our backs. The dominant society, on the other hand, so much as a pinprick and they're shrieking in agony. Well, you know what I say? Let 'em holler. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Anthony Pollard, Frederica Moore, Kenneth Johnson, Antonio Daniels, and James Stiles. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.